fury continues after Sir Keir Starmer signed a so-called £30 billion surrender deal, handing over the sovereignty of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius.
Well, the government argues it secures national security and that without this deal, control of our crucial army base there could be lost via international court rulings.
Well, joining us now in the studio to go through the confusing details is our political correspondent, Catherine Forster. Now, Catherine, those who are against this deal, which does seem to be an awful lot of people, say that this is a surrender deal. We don't need to do this. It's only the advice of an international court that isn't binding that's telling the government to do this. But, of course, the government says it's essential. So who's right?
Well, it's very, very difficult to say, but I was at the press conference yesterday with the Prime Minister and John Healey, the Defence Secretary. Their line is, we have got absolutely no choice to do this. Yes, the current legal ruling from the International Court of Justice in 2019 is advisory, but there are coming down the line legally binding judgments in the next few months. If we don't act now, we'll be in breach of international law. We will then lose access to certain things on which we rely, satellite technology, and so on and so forth. They have made clear that they say that literally no choice at all. The Conservatives, of course, take a very, very different view.
And, of course, this has been a row that has been going for quite some time. Arguably, the Conservatives kicked off this process, but under Boris Johnson, you had an administration that was sort of, in effect, trying to kick the can down the road. And you also had the claim that when David Cameron became Foreign Secretary, he stopped the process that was occurring under previous foreign secretaries because he saw the deal as not being in the national interest. I mean, it does seem that when there is political will to delay, fudge, ignore, that can actually be arrived at.
Yes, they've taken a very different view, this government, to the previous one. And, of course, we've got Lord Hermer as Attorney General. We've got the Prime Minister, a human rights lawyer. They set a lot of store by the law, which made it, I think, all the more ironic that yesterday this announcement was delayed by 6 hours, this signing, by a legal challenge by two Chagosian women accusing the government of being in breach of human rights laws. Now, ultimately, the judge found in the government's favour, but looking at some of the Chagosians there that were there to protest, they feel absolutely appalled at the way they have been treated. Of course, they were booted off that island 60 years ago, not allowed to return. And in the judgment given yesterday lunchtime in London, the judge effectively said when one, state is negotiating with another state, we don't have to consult these people. So I think that's difficult too.
Catherine, thank you very much. And we're joined now by somebody else who's been very vocal on this issue, former Defence Secretary Sir Grant Shapps. Grant, thank you so much for joining us. Now, is Grant with us? Can we see Grant? We don't have him yet, but he has intervened in the debate this morning, essentially saying that the government's claiming that there's all this top-secret classified information that explains why this deal is inevitable. But he was saying that he was party to that information when he was Defence Secretary, and he doesn't remember anything that does make the deal necessary.
This is the peculiar thing, because, of course, the government can always say, look, there's a really good reason we have to do this, but it's secret.
Can't tell you.
You don't know her. She goes to another school. That's the argument. That's the argument, the imaginary girlfriend argument of Sir Keir Starmer here on this issue.
And you were saying earlier that a lot of this is how much credence do you give to international law? And I think we do have Sir Grant Shapps on the line now. Grant, thank you so much for joining us. Now, of course, you were party to some of this classified information when you were Defence Secretary. Did you see anything in that made you think that it was inevitable that we do some sort of deal with Mauritius?
Absolutely nothing. And I cannot keep quiet today whilst I hear the Prime Minister, the Defence Secretary and other ministers going out and claiming there was some inevitability that we absolutely had to hand this sovereignty away, pay for the pleasure of doing so, and we discover in the small print, ask permission from the Mauritians, 2,000 kilometres away, whenever we take any military action from there. It's an outrageous claim by ministers. It's not true. I've been privy to all of the top secret information on this. I can't go into the details, but I can tell you that this is just a weak-willed approach, claiming that they had no choice when they absolutely had a choice to defend our sovereignty, and this is a disgraceful outcome.
What does the government mean then when they talk of the electromagnetic spectrum that is, of course, governed by a UN agency? They say that we could lose access to that spectrum that is so vital for satellite communications, for transmissions of all sorts of kinds, if the legal status of this island is put in jeopardy by the UN-regulated spectrum, so argues the Prime Minister, would also be in jeopardy.
I'm afraid the Prime Minister, a human rights lawyer, is just too prepared to follow whatever the lawyers happen to be recommending as advice, in the same way as when you're a minister, you listen to lawyers and you listen to solicitors, but you come to your own decisions when advisors advise. You don't simply cave in to whatever they say. Now, the original ruling by the International Court of Justice is an advisory ruling. It was made by, amongst others, one of the judges, Shui Hang-Xing. She was formerly of the Chinese Foreign Ministry. Do you really think that they were thinking about this through British eyes? I very much doubt it. And it was advisory. You know what? Our partners on the Chagos Islands, the people actually using it, the Americans, they don't even recognize the International Court of Justice. And this isn't some sort of Trump extreme. They've never signed up to the ICJ. So why on earth we feel that we have to hand away our sovereignty, pay for the privilege, and it turns out ask for permission when we use our own facilities, to an island, to Mauritius, who have never, ever owned this, is beyond belief. And, I can't quite decide whether it is the government being unpatriotic, not understanding the extent to which it's important that we look after our national security, or if they're just completely ignorant of the damage, which is in some ways just as bad or worse. I hope it's the latter, because if it's the former, then they're genuinely acting on behalf of those who seek to harm us.
Grant, how much of this do you think is to do with a certain political friendship between the Prime Minister and one of his oldest friends, Philip Sands KC? Philip Sands KC has been working for the Mauritian government on the side of this. He's known to be going to the football with the Prime Minister from time to time. He's the author of a book called The Last Colony, a tale of exile, justice and Britain's colonial legacy. And indeed, weirdly, in the agreement signed, there are right there on the first page are words about decolonisation and legacy. I mean, is this a political idea?
It's the only possible explanation for doing something which is so much in the interests of our own national strategic decline that there cannot be another reason for doing this. So, in other words, they have put their ideology ahead of our national and international security. They have handed something which will end up being in the influence overall of the Chinese, who are increasing their pressure on Mauritius, will end up with very little control what they do in some of these other islands. And this government has caved in to, as I say, a bunch of sort of lawyers, very much of the type that Keir Starmer might listen to, including, outrageously, somebody who's not declared their interests, but has written extensively about abandoning Britain's role in the world, which includes, I have to say, having bases in strategic locations around the world, which, in ways that I can't go into in huge detail, are immensely important to our national security. I think it's unbelievable that they paid tens of billions of pounds for this. If you think that the winter fuel payment that's caused so much fuss, it's about £2 billion a year. They're paying up to 100 billion, at least 30. It depends how you account for it. And it's certainly not the 3 billion that the government's trying to tell you.